Welcome to the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast, where we connect the art of jiu-jitsu with your career. Our mission is to empower and inspire you with engaging conversations and valuable insights from people just like you who benefit from the shared relationship between your workplace and the art of jiu-jitsu, leading you to a more fulfilling and successful life. Hello and welcome to the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We are so excited today. We have a compelling interview, a compelling guest today on our show. His name is Tyler Ross. Tyler is from the wonderful state of North Carolina. He is a disaster recovery coordinator for the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Division of Soil and Water Conservation. That's a mouthful. He is also an entrepreneur because he has developed an app for BJJ gyms and practitioners. And he'll explain a little bit more about what that is later. And he is also a grappler, a wrestler. He wrestled a little bit, and he has been really focused on the passion of jiu-jitsu, of course. So we are here to do an amazing interview with Tyler. Welcome to our show, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, a happy Friday night. This is the best way to spend our Friday night. I am so excited to do this interview with Tyler. We had a chance to talk before this, and he is a man who is just brimming with wisdom, with experience, and some really cool stories. So we are going to just pack this interview in with great stuff. So Tyler, we were just talking before we went live about your history and how you got into wrestling, which is a great story. I want you to share that with our listeners because it speaks about resilience. It speaks about one door closing and another door opening. So tell our listeners a little bit about the old days when you were just a kid in high school and you went to try out for a sport. So
Yeah,
the floor is yours.
thank you. So I was telling Frank earlier, so I'm from the Southeast and Western North Carolina, and down here, ACC basketball is another religion. So growing up, everybody, played basketball on every playground there was. And when I was in middle school, I went to go try out for the middle school team. And at the door, one of the coaches stopped me and said, "Hey, you're going to be too small to play. You're just too short. We got a lot of kids." And there was a lot of kids out there. And the district I was in was actually at that time very, very good. We had a lot of schools that were good that fed into to Irwin. And so I was ticked off and I walked out of the gym and my Sunday school teacher was standing there. And Mark looked at me and said, "Tyler, what's wrong?" And I told him what happened. And he said, "Well, come with me. I'm going to show you what men do during boys basketball season." And we walked into the theater at Clyde A. Orton Middle School. And at the front, like in the front of the auditorium, there was this old dilapidated mat. And there was about 8 kids standing on it. And so I started wrestling. And I was telling Frank, I didn't really know how I felt about it because the first day, like I was barefoot. I didn't have any wrestling shoes. I was going to try out for basketball. But when I hit my first head and arm on somebody and pinned them, I was like, okay, this is awesome. So yeah, I really enjoyed it and stuck with it through high school.
And then Tyler, you're talking about your first job that you got doing electric work with the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, so yeah, I worked with a subcontractor in between summers at college, and our job was we contracted from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, putting in certain stuff. And so these were a bunch of big, burly, rough men, and for fun at lunch, they would want to wrestle. So which whatever. But what was funny was none of them had ever trained or grew up wrestling. So I was 140 pounds soaking wet and just having my way out there because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to bridge. They didn't know how to use their weight. They didn't know how to distribute. They didn't know how to do a shot. I had a lot of fun. It was hilarious because these were big grown men with huge beards and, sleeve tattooed arms. And then here's this little, scrawny 5'9" dude that's just with a scraggly beard at that time. I think it looked like something off of a goat right here on my chin. And yeah, it was fun.
I love that. I just love the art of grappling and how it helped you with your career. I mean, that's a different kind of help. That's not the kind of help we usually talk about, but if you happen to be in a rough career and that's what they do on their lunch breaks, it's
Yeah,
good to have grappling experience, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And so that wrestling background ultimately led you into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And I know from our previous conversations that that was quite an up and down path. Can you share your story about how you made the bridge from wrestling to jiu-jitsu, and then some of the stuff that you went through, some of the hardships that you dealt with?
Yeah. So, well, when I went to college out in Western Carolina University, there was there was one jujitsu school close or near the school, but it was like an hour and a half away. And then there was another one that was just started in Asheville, and that was a fair piece away. But they had intramural wrestling, so I did a little bit of that. I didn't do too much, but it was something to do around in college. And then when I graduated, there was like one or two more schools popped up in the western part of the state, and I was always like one of my best friends, Jordan. He grew up. His dad did judo. Jordan wrestled with me when we were in middle school. He we were both very big into like, so when we'd watch UFC like growing up in that at that time, we would understand a little bit more about the what happens when you get on the ground, right? Like on the ground stuff. Whereas everybody else was just wanting everybody to stand up and swing. I'm sitting there
Right.
like,
Other people are bored, but you're like, oh no, this is where it gets interesting.
this is what's crazy is like, cause I'm like, I know what it takes to hold that person down. And so me and Jordan would always talk about it. And then Josh, my professor and one of my very good friends is Josh Trampus. He opened a Gracie Ball here in Asheville, and Jordan started going to it in early 2019. And he just kept saying to me, Tyler, you got to do this. He's like, it's what you want. He was like, just come on. And so in late 2019, because I had at that time, well, I still do. I have two boys, but at that time they were both itty bitty, and so we were in and out of the hospital with one of them from he was born prematurely, and so I was like, couldn't really afford to pick up another hobby because I bow hunt, so that took a lot of money, and I knew I didn't need to put another thing on my wife, and so I ended up going at the late 2019, and I think I got to do two or three classes, and then January we went, me and a couple buddies, we had a hunt lined up and we went and hunted out west. And we came back home. And at that time, the world was starting to shut down because we heard about a thing called COVID. And so the gym shut down. I was working for a neighboring county at that time, and I was helping in one of the centers where folks would call in to ask for services and stuff. And so the gym, we weren't allowed to go into the gym. The governor of North Carolina said, none of this stuff is allowed. And then in May, it was Memorial Day weekend, actually. I On that Saturday, I try to do, not because I'm a big CrossFit guy or anything, but like just because of the story. I like to do the Murph for that workout of the day. Do the Murph for him. And that Sunday, I think it was that Sunday or Monday after that, I put my right arm down in the back of a U-Haul. I was helping my wife's aunt move, and my left arm grabbed a futon, and I picked it up. And when I did that, my right ulna snapped, and it was like, I remember it sounded like a 22, just a, you know, and I remember I looked at my wife and I looked at the guy that was on the other end of the couch. He like put the couch down. He was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I think I just broke my arm." And I looked at my wife and I was like, "This is kind of weird, you know." And she's like, "Well, do we need to go anywhere?" And so I was like, "Yeah, let's go to the urgent care. Like, let's see if that's actually what happened." Because I had been complaining about a little bit of pain there, but I thought it was like a kettlebell hit it, or just going through the woods, I hit it on something. I didn't think it was anything serious. Well, I go and I go on that. I go to see the urgent care guy, and he puts this X-ray up, and he goes, "So what's going on?" I just remember looking at the bone, and it was like a Swiss cheese. And he points at it, and he says, "So what's going on is you had a microfracture, and your body's trying to heal it. That's what you see right here." And he showed this thing that looked like it was growing around the Swiss cheese. And he said, "So it broke." He was like, "So I don't have the means to set it here." He's like, "But you're going to go see a specialist on, when they open on Tuesday morning." And so, yeah, so Tuesday morning. And I went to go see this gentleman. He is 40 years. He had been a hand surgeon. And he walked in, he looked at the x ray, and then he turned around and walked out. He didn't say anything to me. A nurse came walking back in there, and she looked like she'd been crying. And so she wrapped my arm and she said, "If you need anything, just let us know. We're going to be here for you through it." And I had no idea what she was talking about. So the doctor walks back in and he says, "Son," he's like, "I've done this 40 years. and I can count on one hand how many times I've seen that. He said, that's a malignant tumor. He was like, you're going to see a specialist at Mission Hospital. So I'd heard the term malignant before, but there's just so much going on. I didn't put two and two together what that meant. So he gave me the gentleman's name I was going to see, and it's Dr. Donald Gajewski. And I'm driving down the road, and I just pull over and I Google Dr. Gajewski, and it pops up and it says orthopedic oncologist. And I was like, well, there's only one reason you go to an oncologist. So I remember I called my wife and I said, hey, I need you to meet me. I'm on my way to this other appointment. Or I need, that's not true. I called my wife, told her what the doctor was, called my community pastor, talked to him. And then my phone rang about an hour later, and it was Dr. Gajewski's office. They had a cancellation, and a buddy of mine's wife was his assistant, and she saw my name, and she knew my birth date. So she knew it was me. And she just went to Dr. G, and she said, look, she was like, if anybody cancels, can we please get Tyler in? This is one of my husband's best friends. Dr. G, I saw him the next day. He looks at it and he says, there was 5 different types of cancer it could be. And he went through all of them, and I forgot what the other 4 were, because he looked at me and he said, the one we don't want is osteosarcoma. So we did a biopsy, and come to find out a few weeks later, it was stage 3 high grade osteosarcoma. And I had to start treatment for it within just a few days of the diagnosis, because it was once the tumor broke and hit air. So what the gentleman was looking at, and he said it was Swiss cheese with like something growing around it. The Swiss cheese was the area where the tumor was, and what we saw growing around it was the outside of the tumor. And when it broke, the tumor hit air and started growing faster. So it started expanding a lot quicker. And he said, he was like, we need to get you. Dr. Gajewski said, we've got to get you to another specialist. So I went downstate to another specialist, Dr. Savage, and that's the greatest name for any oncologist is Dr. Savage. You fit the bill. And he said, son, we got to get you started on chemotherapy within the next 2 weeks, or I can't guarantee that you'll be here 3 years. And so God was good, and he took care of me. And 5 days after that diagnosis, I walked in and started treatment. And so for 11 months, I went through what they call the MAP regimen, and it was all inpatient because it was all fatal doses, lethal doses of chemo, and I had to be under constant, monitoring while I was getting it. And the cycles would be 4 to 6 weeks long, with sometimes a 2-week break in between them. But a lot of days it ended up being less than a week, because getting the chemo out, certain types of medicine out of my body, like one was high dose methotrexate, trying to get that out of my body, it took a little bit longer. And then they did surgery, and so they took it out, and they took the tumor out, put a cadaver bone in with a titanium plate. During that time, I remember the days where it's like, obviously there's dark days that you're going to have when that stuff's happening. But there were times where I just remembered being a kid in high school and in that mat room where it was tough. It smelled. Dudes that I was wrestling with, I was not a wrestler to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. I got to train and wrestle with some really phenomenal wrestlers. And I just remember working with those guys, and just there would be really, really tough days. And I just remember the mental fortitude I got from that of this is going to be over in a minute. It's going to be fine. I just got to lay in here, do my part. I'm going to be fine. And my sons at that time, they started going to Gracie Barra. And the days that I would get to come home and I would get to go see them, Josh left me alone on the back corner, and I looked like Uncle Fester. So my face was swollen from the steroids. I had no hair, and I just had a mask on and my hood up, and the parents knew hey, he's going through treatment. Let's just leave him be, But I got to watch my sons just roll, and I got to watch that community of people that didn't know us that well love on my family, just because my boys were in there training jiu-jitsu. I got to watch my boys get some confidence. They're like their dad. They're not very tall people. But I just remember just sitting there during all that thinking, man, I cannot wait to get back out on the mats. May 6, 2021 was my last date of chemo for osteosarcoma. And I had to wait 6 months to get my port out. I had a port in that they would dual administer chemo in. And I had to wait 6 months to get that out. I had to have 2 clear scans before they take it out. And they took it out, and I had to wait so many days before the port area would heal to where they let me go back on the mat. And I went back out on the mat in December of 2021 and caught COVID. after not having it, like being in and out of the hospital with cancers, treatments, not having it. So technically I had to take the rest of December off until I got, over COVID. And then January 2022, I started rolling. And April of 22, I remember it was my second class back. And I looked at Josh and I said, there's a tap cancer out tournament happening in Charlotte in April. I said, do you think I can do it? He said, yeah, you can do it. He was like, you don't need to get in your mind that you're going to win. He was like, but the fact that you want to do it, we're going to work with you. So 3 months after I was back on the mats, I went and I fought in a tap cancer out tournament down in Charlotte. Did not make the podium, obviously, but it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then since then, I've pretty much trained until we had to redo. We broke my arm in July of, well, I think it was July of 2022, and so the cadaver bone. We were working like Kimuras or something, and Jimmy James, a buddy of ours, was running the class, and I just remember rolling my wrist and be like, man, it feels like there's a gear moving in my arm. And he was like training to be, or he was a nurse, and he came over there and he said, that's not a gear, buddy. He said, we need to get to an x-ray. So I went next, conveniently located in our parking lot is an urgent care. So I walked through the parking lot, got an x-ray. They sent it to Dr. Gajewski, who is my orthopedic oncologist that oversaw everything. And he called me and he said, yeah, you need to get in here. So what we ended up having to do was take a bone graft from my iliac crest in my hip, and I think we did that in September of 2022. And so they put a new cadaver bone in and a new thing. And my body was so jacked up from the chemo that when they went to take the screws out, they just pulled out. They didn't have to back them out. They just pulled out. They never adhered. And so they made a bone graft essentially with my iliac crest, put that in with the new one, and they would let me train so after I broke my arm, I had a custom like molded cast that would like hold up to my fingers for when I was going through treatment. It's what I put it in, so it wasn't always in a cast. And so I still had that. So what he would let me do was I could put that cast on because it went from right here above my distal of my wrist all the way down like right here at my elbow. So everything was secured. And I would take a padded ace bandage and wrap it. So I look like those linemen from the Bears in like the 80s, that's just what they had on their arm. And he'd let me roll with that. He'd let me train, but my professor had to like get confirmation from my wife that he said that. He didn't believe me. So Brittany had to go in there and say, yes,
You had to testify,
she
basically.
did, dude. And like she's the strong one of both of us. She did like so much, that's a life hack as a good partner. But so I got to train, and then after they did the surgery, I got to go back that following Monday because he's like, all we did was re-put stuff in, so you just got to keep it wrapped. And I trained like that. I think I had the cast on for about 8 months between the two things, and then started training. And then scans in 2023 found that I had a small something on my kidney, and then they had to there was something else they found with my bladders. They found I had renal cell clear cell carcinoma on my kidney and bladder. It was urothelial carcinoma on my bladder. September again, they came in and they did a laparoscopic surgery, and it removed both of those cancer. I didn't have to do chemo. So since then, I haven't had to have any more surgeries. I'm knocking on wood, or any more treatments. So just been rocking and rolling since then.
Wow. Frank, to our listeners, I hope you hung on to every single word he just said in the last 20 minutes, because that is a story of adversity and resilience that is amazing. Frank and I were talking a little earlier today, Tyler, about you. And Frank mentioned that we should actually title this episode called "The Way," because you find a way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so thank you so much for all that story and sharing that with us. So, with that adversity and that resilience, did you carry that over into other aspects of your life, into your career, into your professions, and how?
Yeah. So one thing that I've yeah, fortunately learned at an early age is that adversity is going to come. We're guaranteed that adversity is coming. You can't control the adversity, but you can control how you respond, right? And that can look like so many different things. And so for work, with the job that I work right now, like I'm helping the North Carolina Department of Ag. I work part time as disaster recovery coordinator, and all we deal with is adversity. So my primary job responsibility is helping address a lot of the watershed concerns post Hurricane Helene. And that's with a lot of different agencies, state and federal. That's with a lot of different municipalities, a lot of different organizations. And there's always some form of adversity popping up, either with policy, how it's written, either with communicating why we are requesting the funding or how we're going to get it on the ground. So what I've always had to do with that job, and then and also it'll translate to fighter's passport, but I've with the stuff with the Department of Ag, essentially what it's been is like, well, we can't get what we need going this route. We're going to have to switch it up and go another way. And so looking at sometimes a no or not that like not right now, or a no could also be a not right now or not in the way you're trying to do it. In fact, there's a joke at the Department of Ag, the division, the director, they call me Tyler the Gray because I live in the gray area of policy. Like I'm like, okay, well, it says we can't do this, but it doesn't say we can't do this, and how we got to move that around. And then, yeah. And with Fighter's Passport, man, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of adversity, like just in developing it, coming up with it, what I thought it should be, and then listening to customer feedback, how to make certain things work within software. I'm not a software guy, and I got an amazing team that's building it, but having to look at how different things are happening that we're not allowed or we can't do, and having to get around that, and pretty much what we do is adapt and overcome as much as we can.
Great mantra, adapt and overcome. There ever a moment on the mats where you said, this, what I'm learning here on the mats is going to help me so much in my profession?
Oh man, yeah. So on at our gym, I am the 40-year-old lightweight, blue belt, and everyone else there is either 170 or better and younger than me by either any like 5 to 10 years, or they're 170 or better and my age and just absolute units. And so I spend a lot of time on my back and inside control. And there's a lot of times where I'm out there, it's like, I'm never going to admit if I've ever tapped a pressure or a crank, but there's been a lot of times where it's like it's been uncomfortable. I've been hurting or like in a really not a good spot, like people that don't finish a guillotine, they're just big and they're on me. It's like uncomfortable. It's cranking the dog out of my neck. But I've just been laying in there like, I'll be okay. I'm just going to be fine. It's going to be all right. And then just thinking about there's times where I will be in meetings for all the jobs where, or interactions with people for all of them, for Fighter's Passport, for the Department of Ag, and people, they can get very heated sometimes and like not heated, but like very, very focused in on what they want or how they want something to happen, right? And sometimes it can cause conflict. It can bring up like people starting to take things personal. And in those moments, I've been able to think back to those times when I'm down on my back in side control, praying for Jesus to return, that, you know what, it's going to be okay. I just got to keep my head, think, stay calm. Like Bo Nickel is one of my favorite. Like I've loved watching him wrestle. I enjoy watching him in the UFC. And I remember he was talking one time and he said, man, if you can stay calm, it's amazing how good your jiu-jitsu can be or how good your grappling can be. And so since I'm an old man, I've started doing the sloth jiu-jitsu where I've got to just, so I've
Lost. I haven't
realized
heard that one yet. I got to learn that form. I need that form as well.
it's just
You know,
slow. Yeah. You're not
it's
forcing,
it's
you're
the
not
gas
flying, you're
tank.
just slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
it's re-
exactly right.
it's conserving your, believe me, I hear what you're saying. You're preaching to the choir on that. Jason and I were talking about you, and we were saying that everything you do is like starting from the bottom under 100, under a 200-pound guy. Like all the injuries you have, that's starting you from behind everybody else. Then you said everybody at your gym is like 170 and they're savages, and you're dealing with that. So you're on your back getting your frames, and then with your job, like the disaster recovery, that's definitely starting on your back. A storm, was it Helene that came? That now you're starting with debris. You're starting again on your back without resources. So I just think that you're such an interesting person in that everywhere you're starting from uh, a disadvantage. And I love the way that you said, keep your head, breathe, think, and stay calm. And that's such a good lesson and a motivational lesson for our listeners to hear. I do want to just switch gears for a second. You had in our correspondence a quote that I just thought was so interesting. I don't know if you made it up or I don't know where it came from, but you said a trained society is a polite society. Can you
Yeah.
expound on that and talk about where that came from?
Who is the person? And I stole it from somebody. Is like an armed society is a polite society. Like it's talking about, with
So you
how,
modified it. You took somebody
yeah,
else's
oh
and
yeah,
modified it to
yeah.
jujitsu.
Yeah, and it could go back to like how Capone said, right? You get further with a kind word and a gun than you do with a kind word.
Yeah.
It's not along those same things, but it's essentially, man, like what's made me a lot kinder is like we've got a guy at our gym, Miguel. He is a brown belt, and I don't know how much he weighs, but he's a head shorter than me, and he is one of the toughest roles for anybody that comes in there. And then we've got another guy that you would never, ever, ever suspect that he is just an absolute assassin. And so what it's done for me is like I've always looked at people like, I don't know if that person's trained. I don't know. Like, why would I get upset at them? Why am I going to be mad? And also, like, it's a place for me, like, sometimes when I'm angry, it's a really great place for me to get that out, to where I can shut off everything that's in my mind and I'm just concentrating right on what's in front of me. And it really, I mean, it's therapeutic in that way, in the physical sense. And I think if more people had an outlet like that, one, where they were actually physically aggressive and getting it out, that'd be one thing, because there is a quote that I didn't throw in there, but it should have been. It was like, Jordan Peterson made that comment about what it actually means to be peaceful. In order to be peaceful, you've got to be capable of violence. And so a lot of people that say they're peaceful, but they don't they have no way to actually commit violence. It's not that they're peaceful; they're just not a threat. Does that make you know what I mean? And
Yes,
that's
I heard I actually saw that reel. That was a very very interesting. That was a
and
great
I think
reel. And go ahead, you go.
No, so I was just going to say, I think the more people that I've yet to meet, now there's bad actors and everything, right? But by and large, I have met less and less jerks and, well, jerks is the best way to put them, or jackasses that train jujitsu or certain combat sports that I have met in other walks of life, because they're all very kind, they're all very humble, and they're just good people.
100%. We always talk in our gym about like how looks can be completely deceiving. You just said it at your gym too. There are some people that do not look like killers, but they are absolute killers. And we were having this conversation once at our gym, and then one of the guys said, "This is why when I go out, I don't want a problem with anybody."
No.
I don't know what they know. That guy could be like, that guy could have boxed all of his, that guy could be a professional boxer. And you're going around thinking, oh, I'm all, you have no idea what people know. And that is one of the reasons you're a trained society is a polite society because anybody who trains in martial arts knows that no matter what that person looks like, that person could be an assassin. That person could maul people. And plus, when you train in the gym, you don't need to do that outside. You don't want to do that outside. You're confident, you know you got your skills, but you also know don't judge anybody else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So I
and it
love
makes
that
me
quote.
think, too, like if I'm outside somewhere and I have an altercation with somebody and we're rolling on the ground, he's probably not going to let me roll, get a foam roller out after he's going to think it's weird that I'm over there stretching, like doing,
Yeah.
like doing child's pose and pigeon pose, like talking about why my shoulders hurt.
You always stop them when you're being choked, when you're being choked, like, hold on a second, I gotta get the foam roller. Hold on.
Hang on a second. Yeah. That was more just pressure, man.
Yeah, this is awesome. So can I just take a question here, Frank, if you don't mind?
Of course.
So I feel like Tyler, you're a modification expert. Like you find ways to modify whatever situation you're in, uh, from your physical health situation, and also you mentioned that one of your bosses in the disaster recovery realm that you work with mentioned something about you being able to look at something and say, well, it says this, but it doesn't say that.
Hmm.
And I feel like you're able to be creative with that. And then also with the fighter's passport, that has required you to really take a step back, start with a clean slate, from a really bad position. Nobody's done the business before. Nobody's really has had experience doing this before. But you're like, okay, I'm going to take the risk, and I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to be innovative. And that is it's admirable. So can you talk a little bit about how you being creative and innovative and being able to modify things so well, how has that worked in your profession, in your fighter's passport, and also in the disaster recovery stuff?
Yeah. So with the disaster recovery stuff, it's really been nice to see, or I've really been able to modify based off of like when you give me if I know what we're trying to do. So for example, we're trying to remove debris from the river. And that way in the event or in out of the waterway. So in the event of another storm, we don't have that debris move or become another issue or threaten infrastructure or property within or health and life within the watershed. So the program we were working with is a federal program, and one of the definitions it has was it's an immediate threat to life, health, or property. And then it has life, health, property, or infrastructure. So infrastructure is everything, something that we all have, right? So they wouldn't really expand on what property was. So I started looking up the definition of property, and then the governing agency that oversees it for the feds that this agency is a part of. They had a definition of property that I brought up in a meeting. And one of the things it outlined was utilities. So in Western North Carolina, we have a lot of utilities that are above overhead and underground. And so what we were able to do was to go and quantify what the cost was for those utilities to put them in, what the cost benefit is to protect them, and then add that on as a value add to stretching the dollar further for that program on how we were going to, protect the resources. Whereas historically, they would not, that wasn't a thing we had done, but we were able to get in there and find a definite, and that was really just easy. Other things have been like, well, we can't use these funds to do X, but we can use them to do Y and Z. Well, while we're doing Y and Z with these funds, let's figure out how we can find another program or what we need to have happen to where we can find funds to take care of X. And a lot of times, what it is just, I appreciate you saying like it's me modifying, but it's a lot of me just being like, no, you don't know everything, Tyler. You need to just shut up and sit there. And people that know me and are going to hear that are going to laugh because I'm sure to them that seems very overwhelming, like, or not who I am sometimes. But just sit there and like look and think and just get creative. Like, there's all sorts of ways you can make stuff happen, right? Like, there's a couple people that I follow, like Pace Morby, that does like alternative financing for like real estate stuff and real estate deals. And there's just all these different ways to like try and, down here we have this expression, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So that's essentially what I've grown up on. And with Fighter's Passport, so when I first started Fighter's Passport, I think I told you guys while we were talking, it came about like because once I got clear to travel and get on a plane again, we went places. So we went down to Orlando, and we were down there, and luckily there was a Gracie Ball close to me, and I found the schedule was correct, and I went to it. And it's Claremont, Gracie Ball Claremont. It was a great school. And I trained there. And then we went back down there another time, and I looked for gyms, and we were on the other side away from Claremont, so it was like an hour drive to it. But I kept looking for others gyms and finally just found one that had all their information correct. And so I went to that gym. And then I was with one of my best friends, who's now my business partner in Fighter's Passport. We were in New York, and we were in Manhattan. He had a business meeting, and his wife couldn't go, so he was like, "You want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll go nerd out in the Museum of Natural Science or Natural History for like 10 hours. You can come find me in the Plains Indian exhibit." And while we were there, I really just want to go train somewhere. And in New York City, there's a lot of gyms. So I Googled BJJ near me, and I want to say it was close to 2 or 3 hours going through and just trying to find a gym that was so close to me. Cause like the only Gracie Ball was on Long Island. And if I wanted to get to that one, I needed to start taking the public transportation 2 hours prior to that moment if I wanted to make the next class. And so I sat there and I kept going through all these different places. I would call some, I'd text some, I'd look on Instagram, Facebook. A couple of them had WhatsApp. And finally I was just so flustered. I called my professor. And he said, dude, where you're at, you can't be far from Marcelo Garcia School. So Marcelo's was one of the gyms that I had tried. I think I tried to message them. And so I just called them, and they answered the phone on the first ring. And I went there, and I think it was $40 for the drop in, or maybe $30. But they told me, they're like, look, this over this mat, because this time I was a 3-stripe white belt. They said this mat is for blue belts and above. They're doing like advanced classes. This is kind of an all levels class over here. And Scott Kaplan was the black belt. He's one of Marcelo's black belts. And he was teaching the class, and it was no-gi. And I got there at 6, and I didn't leave till 11 o'clock that night. And I rolled through 4 straight classes, and it was amazing community of people that I met on the mat. I got to roll with this one kid from New Mexico. I think his name was Adrian. He was up there because his dad was visiting his oncologist for prostate cancer treatment, and he had to go up there once a year to get scans. And Adrian was an absolute monster, but one of the sweetest human beings you'll ever meet. And then the next one, I went to a guy, and he had a very thick accent, a New York accent, and he asked me if I was a cowboy from Kansas. And I told him no. Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis, is trying to sound like me, not for like somebody from Kansas. But then I got to roll with this other group of guys that were just phenomenal. These young ladies that were just absolute killers, and they were so kind. And I just didn't want to leave. And I remember like I was walking back to the hotel, and Joshua was there, and he goes, "Man, where you been?" I told him, and I said, "Josh," he's like, "Dude, you just look like you're on a high." And I was like, "I don't know how to explain it, man, but this was one of the funnest things I've ever done." And like I actually like my eye like right here was cut and my lip was fat. Like I looked like I had just been mugged, you know. But I was just like, man, this was one of the funnest nights of my life. I'm so glad I got to go do this. And I got to talk to all these people. Then it became an obsession of like, man, I want to go start training at all these other places. I want to go meet all these people, you know, and meet the community of jiu-jitsu as a whole. And so when that next morning I woke up, and so I just Googled, you know, like BJJ gym app that helps, help you find a gym. And I found it was BJJ Globetrotters. There was a couple other older databases that hadn't been maintained. Now the BJJ Globetrotters is great for what they have it laid out for, but for the other stuff, it was really like there was just like databases and like dashboards that were very old or hadn't, because there was a lot of gyms that went out in COVID, and then in the past 5 years, there's been an explosion of gyms. It was just none of it was very consistent. The information wasn't there. And so I was like, hmm. So I actually wrote down on a napkin and like put it in my backpack, or I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I had it in my backpack. And at that time, I was involved in another startup with a couple buddies that was a hunting company. And we were meeting with this gentleman that works for he works for the state of North Carolina. He's a small business and technology development person. His name's Bob Rogers. And I got to sit and I was talking with Bob, and he knew that I was very entrepreneurial, and things weren't like things with the hunting company went a different direction. And he was talking to me, and he said, do you have any other ideas or anything that you've been working on? So we didn't have a piece of paper. I wrote it on a napkin. I said, Bob, this is what I've been thinking about. And initially what it was to help jiu-jitsu athletes find gyms while they were traveling and help facilitate the drop-in process to where people could find the gym, see the class schedule, RSVP to the class to let the gym know they were coming, sign the waiver, and pay all before they walked in the door. Because I get to help at our gym in Asheville, and there are times where people they're popping in for a drop-in. Class has already started, but we still want them to come train. We're not going to be like, oh, you're too late. But like somebody's got to stop, get off, and take all that stuff and answer all these questions where, for as a gym owner, like, Jason, you could say this, like, you want to spend more time on the mat and less time on a screen, So we have two phrases: more mat time, less screen time, or more rolling, less scrolling.
Nice tagline.
So when it started, that's all I was thinking of. Then meeting and talking with more gym owners, more athletes, I found there's a huge underserved thing, and helping to do a seminar at our gym. I realized that there's really not an easy, conducive way to do a seminar online. And, we've developed a way to do it now to where it takes 5 minutes to set up a seminar. It handles the registration, the waivers, the payment, the check-in, everything. We've developed a way for athletes are able to track their training, to journal their training, and we're not charging anybody for any of this. The way that our revenue works is off of, transactions. So if an athlete pays a drop-in fee, that's where we make our money, but we don't charge a monthly subscription. We don't charge anything to the athletes just to have their profile. We don't charge anybody to come on and check our stuff out. And what we're working on is trying to have the most accurate database with the most information to where if I'm coming up to y'all's neck of the woods, I can click on Jason's gym. He'll know that there's a 40-year-old blue belt coming. The guy's already signed the waiver and he's paid the drop-in fee. That way, when I get there, I still try to get there early. If Jason wants to talk to me one-on-one, because you also want to protect your people and you don't want to have some jackwagon come in there. Like, he has the time to actually talk to me, get to know me, engage me a little bit better before he's just like, go on out there. Instead of spending that 15 minutes collecting a waiver, collecting payment and stuff like that, he's actually able to spend that 15 minutes like, who's this person coming to my gym? And also talk about the culture he's built, which I think, I'm assuming here, Jason, but I think that's a lot of the pride, a lot of the gyms I've been at is a lot of the owners. That's what they pride themselves on, is the culture and the community they've built.
I am you we talked over text about the fighter's passport, and I didn't really get a great picture in writing, but by you explaining it in words, I am amazed. I think this is amazing. And I think, like you said, it helps keep that culture and community. And I think you found a solution to some problems, though those are problems that school owners have. I can say that, being a school owner, it's difficult to try to organize like a seminar, for example, and need to pay out of pocket expenses to, have that instructor that's going to teach the seminar come, make sure he's getting paid, collecting registrations and waivers and everything. And it sounds like you're kind of cutting out all of that stuff, So I
Oh,
think it's
yeah.
great. So it's much appreciated from me. I'm gonna take advantage of this for sure.
Awesome, man.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
just
it's pretty
from a
cool.
user's perspective, like you really could go global with this because when I've gone to Spain, I've had to do what you do. Get on there and then you send like, can I come for just one time? What do I need to do? When's what's the schedule? Do I have to sign something? And they get back to you, but it's like you said, some of it's WhatsApp, some of it's through email. That would be, you really should take that. I think that after you dominate the local market, you should go national and then go international. If you can be the first in that space, I teach entrepreneurship and I love your idea. I think it's an awesome
And
idea.
we had him on our podcast, Frank. See? We're saying that right
That's right.
now. He was on our
That's right.
podcast before he became
That's
famous.
exact. So we won't forget you when we're famous, and you can't forget us when you're famous. Deal? Is that a
I
deal?
like that. That sounds good. Yeah.
And just a quick shout out to our listeners. Check it out. Fighter's Passport. Can you tell our listeners how they would get on that?
Yeah, so it's right now the way we have two ways folks to sign on. They can sign on with a Google account or a Meta account. And we like the information stored through Google, but we're not selling your information. I have no desire to do that. I hate that I have to check my phone and screen every phone call and every text message. So I'm not going to add to that. But what it is we use those two ways for folks to sign in. If you go to app.fighterspassport.com, you can sign in as a user and it'll just hit a sign in button. It'll be all over the place. And you can sign in with Google or Meta. It'll take you to your profile. You can go fill that profile out as much as you want. It's a private profile, like I can see it and my software team can see it. It's not public yet. And but if you develop that profile, you go like, say you go to Jason's gym to go train at a seminar, you'll be able to hit that button, register RSVP, do the payment, and then on Jason's side, he'll see your name and your information, just of your email and your picture. And then you'll have a QR code that's assigned just to you that can't be replicated. It changes so often so that you can't screenshot and send it to your buddy. So sorry about that. But then Jason can check you in that way. And then if you're a gym owner and you're wanting to get on there, oh, I'm sorry. I jumped the gun there. I apologize. As a user, after you develop that profile, you can go and look at doing a feature to where you can click a thing to choose. You want to commit to do X amount of workouts in a certain amount of time. It's a little bit of an accountability thing just to help you out. And then if you
Nice.
check in and you log a workout, you can click the three buttons and you can push a button that says like add notes. And when it says add notes, it'll pop up and it'll ask you about how you felt physically, how you felt mentally, how you felt overall, the level of intensity, what you did. And then there's a note page, essentially. It's 5,000 characters that you can hit the button and it'll record you and do talk to text. It understands me. So if it understands me, it's going to understand you. And you can talk through what you just did. And then you can go back, because there's some people, man, they like to go back and look at it. And I do every now and then, but I just like to see how much I've done and go over what I have done. And so you can save all that information. You can put all your information in there. And then for the gym owners, there's a place for you to click a button that says, add my gym, enroll my gym. Or you can just email me directly, Tyler@fighterspassport.com, and I can help set up the gym owners. To set up the front page takes about 5 minutes. It's not hard. The class part is what I'm working on, taking that down because I know that is the challenge. Is how to make that easier because I getting to help Josh run his gym on some of the admin stuff. Dude, gym owners get hit up with snake oil every day of something. There's some latest, greatest, this marketing tool is going to guarantee to get you this many people in your gym, or this is going to help you. And I don't want to be that. I do want to give you something that is you're just going to have to set it up once. And then when you need to change something in it, it's just like logging in and changing something on a Facebook profile. It'll take 5-10 minutes. Very user friendly. If I made it, I like to use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And so that's what we've really tried to do here is like make something that's user friendly. It's not a mobile app; it's a web app. Because I couldn't imagine if if I went to go and do this on a mobile app, and you're going to set up a gym and you're using your phone to put all that information in, you'd be cussing me. In no time, you'd be cussing. So yeah.
All right, so users, to our listeners, check it out, Fighters Passport. Please check it out, and it sounds like a great thing. I actually went on it and I went around it a little bit, and I'm actually a member. I'm in there. I'm in your database now.
Nice.
So there you
All
go.
right.
There you go. Snoop Dizzle
Snoop
D.
Dizzle D.
How
That's
did you
right.
know that my name is Snoop Dizzle D? How did you know that?
I went and read the thing on, I think it's either the podcast Sprout or like y'all's page, and I thought that was very interesting.
Oh, I don't even remember
You'll see a
putting that
lot
there.
of notes in Snoop Dizzle D's note section, Tyler.
Yeah.
You'll probably notice that he'll abbreviate what he's been doing. He'll, if he did like 5 crunches, he'll tell you he did 20, or, if he did something for 5 minutes,
It's called poetic license is what it's called. Poetic license, which I take
That's
advantage of as much as I can. Wow.
That's awesome.
Jason, we have gotten, and I know that a lot of our listeners sometimes are having some adverse situations that they're dealing with. And so for me, this is a very important interview because I think you're going to give a lot of people inspiration to not quit. I love that.
Get some takeaways here, though, Frank. Okay.
All right. So some of our takeaways. I think one of my favorite takeaways is right from the beginning, Tyler, when you talked about a door slamming in your face. You were a kid, you were so excited, you were going to be a basketball star, and they didn't even give you a chance. They just shut the door on you. And then right from that, immediately another door opened, and that was wrestling, which opened you up into the grappling world, which has helped you in so many ways that you've talked about. I liked that. I think you are a living, breathing testament of the theory of you find your path, whatever boulders in your way. And Jason, you've taught me this, and I love this. When there's a boulder in your way, sometimes you can't bench press it off, you can't drill through it, but you can always go around the boulder. And I feel like, Tyler, you had so many boulders thrown into your path, and some of them you really couldn't just drill through. So you just went around them, you went over them, you dug under them. I thought that was a beautiful story. How many times you went for surgery and you went for this. You even showed up to your practice with your molded cast on and said, I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna do the best I can. And I love that. That's totally inspirational. You talked about, and Marcus Aurelius would be giving you 2 thumbs up right now. You said you can't control adversity, but you can control your reaction to it. That is right out of the Stoic Bible. That is, I don't know if you got that from reading Stoicism or if you got that from your own experience, but that is just a testament, a living testament of the greatest philosophers and what they espoused. Love that. You also said Tyler the Gray, was it? Your nickname was
Yeah.
Tyler the Gray. I love that you are somebody who says we can't do this. Agreed, but what can we do? That is definitely the philosopher of a winner. That's just taking a different angle, moving your angle and saying, okay, I agree. I won't do this. I can't do this. That's my constraint. But there's some other way to do it, a different angle, different perspective, different vantage point. Thought that was great. Jason, your question about the risk taking, the adaptability, the creatability was a great question because that catapulted him into going on to his own entrepreneurial venture, which is exactly what you're doing when you're an entrepreneur. You're taking risks, you're adapting, you're being creative. Another thing I thought that I love that you taught, which isn't necessarily about careers, but community, and how your software program helps people expand their community and go other places. And I like that makes me want to kind of visit some other jiu-jitsu gyms and get that community. And hopefully I could do that through your software. I think that was great. And in the end, I just want to say thank you for sharing your personal struggles, your medical struggles with our listeners who probably have their own, many of which you have their own, and saying, listen, I did this. You know, malignant cancer. I fought that. I never gave up. And then you went back and you did the tap out cancer. I just want to thank you for sharing that inspiration with our listeners. It's a big deal. Thank you for that.
I honestly, dude, if there's anything, it's nothing for me, Frank and Jason. That's 100% Jesus. So I'm just happy to be here.
That's
Good that you're
awesome.
strong on your faith. And Jason, we had a call to action that we wanted to mention also because Tyler, our listeners wouldn't have heard this amazing story if it wasn't for the fact that Tyler saw one of our podcasts or heard one of our podcasts and chimed in and got in touch with us and said, hey, I'd love to share what I do with you guys. So we want to put a call to action out to all of our listeners from all over the world, which we're getting more and more international and we're expanding from Massachusetts. You even hear the cool accent that Tyler has, which is proof that we're expanding. And so, to our listeners, we want your stories. We want to know what you've been through and how Jiu-Jitsu has helped you in your personal and career lives. So, chime in. Jason, tell them about the form that you have. Look on our channel, and we have a form that you could fill out, or just email us at Career Jitsu. Email us and let us know that you want to be on our show. Tyler, once again, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
And continue your fight and continue everything you're doing. And please stay in touch. And if you're ever in the area, hopefully our gym will get on your app. Get on that app. Get to our gym, and I would absolutely love to roll with you.
Absolutely, Frank. I'll do that.
All right. Sending you a big hug. Bam. Hope you got it. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you to you and everybody. Stay safe and keep practicing jiu-jitsu. Take care.
Awesome.